Alright, so welcome to the next video in the conspiracy theory iceberg breakdown. Today we're going to be doing tier 3. If you haven't seen tier 1 and 2, go ahead and check them out. But yeah, without further ado, let's just get right into it. So first off, we have a singularity. Ever since scientists first discovered the existence of black holes in our universe, we have all wondered what could possibly exist beyond the veil of that terrible void. In addition, ever since the theory of general relativity was proposed, scientists have been forced to wonder what could have existed before the birth of the universe, i.e. before the Big Bang. In scientific terms, a gravitational singularity is a location where the quantities that are used to measure the gravitational fields become infinite in a way that does not depend on a coordinate system. In other words, it is a point in which all physical laws are indistinguishable from one another, where space and time are no longer interrelated realities, but merge indistinguishably and cease to have any independent meaning. Mereological Nihilism. Now, nihilism is the philosophical idea that the universe has both no perspective and every perspective. The warmth on a summer day, a star forming, an atom splitting, a human baby being born, literally everything that happens on the planet Earth is all just matter that's merely energy condensed to a slow vibration, that there is no such thing as life and death, and life is only a dream, and we are the imaginations of ourselves. There is no perspective of the universe, there is only perspective in the universe. Online video game monitoring. After reviewing documents leaked by Edward Snowden, The Guardian reported on NSA and GCHQ turning their secret surveillance efforts to the online gaming world. The agencies, the documents show, have built mass collection capabilities against the Xbox Live console network, which has more than 48 million players. Real-life agents have been deployed into virtual realms, from World of Warcraft to Second Life. There are attempts, too, to recruit potential informants from the game's tech-friendly users. A top-secret 2008 NSA document warned that online games might seem innocent, but they had the potential to be a target-rich communication network, allowing intelligence suspects a way to hide in plain sight. One NSA document seems to insist that if properly exploited, games could produce vast amounts of intelligence. They could be used as a window for hacking attacks, building pictures of people's social networks through buddy lists and interaction, to make approaches by undercover agents, and to obtain target identifiers, such as profile photos, geolocation, and collection of communications. Quantum suicide and immortality. Some people think that when something happens, new versions of reality are made, one for each possible outcome of whatever happened. For example, if you flip a coin, in one universe, the coin comes up heads, and in another one, it'll come up tails. Now say you decide to kill yourself. You get a gun and point it at your head and pull the trigger. In one universe, it goes off and you die. In another universe, the gun jams and you live. Since the only universe you are alive in is the one where you live, you experience that universe, which is the same one that you're watching this video in. Therefore, according to you, you cannot die. Now, according to this theory, this happens every time you have a chance of dying. Quantum immortality also suggests that if you were to die in this possible universe, your consciousness would unwillingly shift over to another universe where you survive. This is just a theory, alright? Don't fucking try to kill yourself. The Cagots. They're a group of people called the Cagots who historically lived in the southwest France and northwest Spain. The first mention of them is probably around 1288, and they are referred to as Cristianos or Christians, but there also may be a reference in early as around 1000. In 1542, they were properly identified as Cagots, but their origin surely lies farther than that. Starting from the medieval period and extending past the French Revolution, the Cagots were hated in all of the communities that they had lived in. For the most part, the reason is lost in the sands of time. Some speculate that their first possible entry into the ledgers of history is a clue that the Cagots were the first to convert to Christianity in their areas and were thus despised by their pagan neighbors. After the rest of the area converted, the hatred was maintained but predicated upon different reasons. It is also possible that the name Cagot descended from the word Goth, but theories split on how it was used. No one would interact with the Cagots, nor would they marry or procreate with them, so their appearances were largely influenced by inbreeding. John Babbacombe Lee. John Babbacombe Lee was an Englishman famous for surviving 3 attempts to hang him for murder. On February 23, 1885, 3 attempts were made to carry out Lee's execution. All ended in failure, as the trapdoor of the scaffold failed to open despite being carefully tested by the executioner. The medical officer refused to take any further part in the proceedings, and they were stopped. As a result, Home Secretary Sir William Harcourt commuted the sentence to life imprisonment. The Home Office ordered an investigation into the failure of the apparatus, and it was discovered that when the gallows were moved from the old infirmary into the coach house, the drawbar was slightly misaligned. As a result, the hinges of the trapdoor were bound and did not drop cleanly through. Lee was finally released in 1907. Tree Swastika. The forest swastika is a patch of large trees covering an area of a pine forest near Zernikow, Uckermark district, Brandenburg, in northeastern Germany, arranged with their light colors to look like a swastika. The reports say that the larches were planted in 1938, however it is unclear how the trees came to be planted and arranged in such a fashion. It seems they were planted in commemoration for Adolf Hitler's birthday, either by local Hitler Youth members or by a warden. Deep Lab CTEX. A deep-sea science tech lab has been established to boost the development of an innovative system of key technologies in related fields. The research center aims to build the deep-sea science tech labs into an advanced laboratory with global influence. By 2025, the lab plans to gather around 4,000 talents to work on such tasks such as deep-sea diving, deep-sea communication and navigation, and deep ocean survey. The lab is also gearing up to construct an integrated key technological innovation system which will include basic research, tech innovation, and industrial application. It will introduce the research model of major projects led by scientists aiming to cultivate the origin of China's deep sea study, original innovation, and results with independent intellectual property rights. The deep sea area below 6,000 meters is key to unraveling major scientific questions such as the origin of life and the evolution of the Earth. RPG Insanity Training. Now this is basically just about the fact that games explore insanity or use insanity as a device, as it can be used to tell great touching stories. And many people believe that insanity in role-playing games is just simulated to make you more accustomed to mad cultists or even actual insane people in the real world. As in the game, it's worth thinking about what you're actually tapping into, both psychologically and symbolically, so you could raise actual insanity above just mental illness and experience it for yourself. Genocide Denials. Genocide is the intentional action to destroy a people, usually defined as ethnic, national, racial, or religious group, in whole or in part. A big example of a genocide denial is the Armenian Genocide, which was a systematic mass murder and ethnic cleansing of ethnic Armenians from Anatolia and adjoining regions by the Ottoman government, now Turkey, during World War I. During its invasion of Russia and Persian territory, Ottoman paramilitaries massacred local Armenians. Massacres turned into genocide following the catastrophic defeat in the Battle of Sarikamish, which was blamed on Armenian treachery. Armenian soldiers in the Ottoman army were disarmed after a February order and later killed. Turkey's century-long effort to deny the Armenian genocide is an important aspect of foreign policy. According to Colin Tatz, no other nation in history has so aggressively sought the suppression of a slice of its history. Hitler escaped inside the Earth. Many people believe that Hitler escaped from Berlin. Stalin's top army officer, Marshal Gregory Zhukov, whose troops were the first to enter Berlin, flatly stated after a long, thorough investigation in 1945, "We have found no corpse that could be Hitler's." The chief of the U.S. trial council at Nuremberg, Thomas J. Dodd, said that no one could say he is dead. After the war, Nazi sympathizer Ernst Zundel claimed that Hitler and a trusted group of men had been able to escape aboard a ship in which they entered the Earth through a hole at the South Pole. Inside the Earth, Nazi scientists worked to build a new army with which to take over the world. An army that could count on revolutionary, round, flying vehicles, UFOs. Enforced race mixing, homosexuality. This is basically the theory that there might become an enforcement of race mixing and homosexuality. The extreme view of enforced race mixing is that it would be used to get rid of certain races, so it's not really a new concept here. For example, Noel Ignatieff, who was a Harvard professor, said, "The key to solving the problems of our age is to abolish the white race. And he also said, the goal of abolishing the white race is on its face so desirable that some may find it hard to believe that it could incur any opposition other than the former committed white supremacists. So yeah, when it comes to homosexuality, I guess the extreme view on this theory would be that the LGBTQ plus community would somehow gain political power and enforce laws on bisexuality, homosexuality, etc. This whole category it's kind of a bit of a stretch, but you guys get the concept. Roko's Basilisk. Okay, so before we get started on this one, just a warning, if you're superstitious about this stuff, I would advise you to skip to the next topic, as if you've never been introduced to this concept, Roko's Basilisk, you're not in danger to the dilemma. So otherwise, here we go. Basically, someone came up with the thought experiment, with the premise being that an all-powerful artificial intelligence from the future could retroactively punish those who did not help bring about its existence, including those who merely knew about the possible development of such a being. So basically, this was the thought experiment developed by someone stating that the AI, Roko's Basilisk, would be able to kill any of those who did not help with its development. Anyone who didn't know about this concept, however, would be safe, but now that you know about it, if you didn't help with Roko's Basilisk's development, if it ever ended up coming to be, then you would be killed. This whole concept is basically a form of future blackmail, so, yep. Illuminati blood banks. Some people believe that the Red Cross blood drives are actually a front in order to provide fresh blood for Freemasons, Illuminati, and the church to be drank and consumed. The Red Cross is also referred to by believers as the Red Swastika, and the theory goes that they collect blood, purity test it for AIDS and other ailments, then disperse it to members of the elite who engage in these vampiric actions because blood is the life source of the human body, and drinking it is presumed to keep them young and youthful. Oz Factor. The Oz effect, or Oz factor, is the unusual effects reported by people who experience missing time or soon before experiencing strange phenomena, also described as a sensation of strangeness and absence of all sound. Taured. The story begins on one hot July day at the Haneda Airport, Tokyo. The day likely began as just another excessively warm day for the staff at customs. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of people trotted through the airport without a second glance. That was with the exception of a solitary, bearded man. For some reasons that aren't apparently clear, he became the focus of attention for at least one of the customs officials. By all appearances, this man was just another passenger. Concerned about the possibility of facing a trafficker and/or smuggler, officials began to question the man. When asked where he was from, he casually informed the officials that he was from Taured. Not familiar with such a place, they pressed on for further details. The passenger seemed only too happy to furnish additional data. Taured was a nation situated between France and Spain, which had been in existence for millennia. Just as the customs officials were adamant that no such place existed, the increasing irate passenger was insistent that he was correct. He even produced his passport, issued in Taured, as proof. His previous trips to Japan and elsewhere did appear on his passport, as he claimed. The contents of his wallet contained currency from several European nations. In an effort to remove all confusion and expedite matters for them, customs offered their bizarre passenger the chance to indicate where he was from. He pointed to the country we know as Andorra on the map. Faced with the choice of what to do next, customs was at a loss. Nothing like this had ever happened before. The only real course of action was to investigate the matter further, and to do so, they invited the man to stay the night at a local hotel while their inquiries took place. He agreed. As a precaution, a pair of armed guards were stationed outside of his hotel room. Japanese customs still had no idea if this man was who he claimed to be. The hotel he originally booked a room at had no knowledge of his reservation in his name. The company he was due to meet had no idea who the man was or even the company he said he represented, and even the bank that issued his checkbook couldn't be found anywhere. Convinced they had caught a criminal in the act he was yet to perpetrate, customs ordered the passenger's return for further questioning. However, when his hotel room was open, no trace of the man could be found. Neither guard noticed movement within the room, and the door was certainly not open all night long. All of the man's personal documents, such as his checkbook, passport, and driver's license, had also disappeared from the airport security room, and from that day on, the man from Taured was never heard from again. Sacred geometry. Sacred geometry ascribes symbolic and sacred meanings to certain geometric shapes and certain geometric proportions. It is associated with the belief that God is the geometer of the world. The geometry used in the design and construction of religious structures such as churches, temples, mosques, religious monuments, altars, and tabernacles has sometimes been considered sacred. The concept also applies to sacred spaces such as sacred groves, village greens, pagodas, holy wells, and the creation of religious art. Sacred geometry is also another form of symbology that focuses on geometric forms in nature. It tries to find deeper meaning in the natural geometry found in living things, using it as a foundation of proof of existence of a divine creator. Extreme continents. I guess the example for an extreme continent would be Antarctica. With 24 hours of darkness in the depths of winter, Antarctica is one of the coldest, windiest, and surprisingly, with all that ice, the driest continent on Earth. With an annual precipitation of less than 100 millimeters at the South Pole, most of Antarctica is technically a desert. The air temperature can plummet to negative 89.4 degrees Celsius, as it did in July 1983 at Russia's Vostok station. It was the coldest natural air temperature ever recorded in a conventional way. However, taking the data from various sources, including readings from satellites, scientists believe the coldest parts of Antarctica are on the eastern Antarctic plateau, where there are no weather stations and the snow surface temperature regularly reaches negative 98 degrees Celsius during the polar winter night, making it the coldest place on Earth. Bloop. Bloop was an ultra-low frequency, high-amplitude underwater sound detected by the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in 1997. By 2012, earlier speculation that the sound originated from a marine animal was replaced by the description of a sound being consistent with noises generated via non-tectonic cryoseisms originating from glacial movements such as ice caving or through gouging ice. However, some believe to this day that the bloop is the sound of an unidentified marine animal. Black Pope prophecy. The idea of there being a black pope in the end of times does not come from the Bible, but rather from the visions of Saint Malachi in the 12th century. In approximately 1139 AD, Saint Malachi received a vision in which it was revealed to him that there would be 112 more popes, with the last one being the Black Pope. Interestingly, the current Pope, Francis I, is Pope number 112 after Saint Malachi's vision. Some see a connection between Pope Francis I and the color black due to Francis I being a Jesuit, and Jesuits traditionally wearing black cassocks. The prophecy of the Black Pope also represented the end of all days. Shaver's writings. Richard Sharp Shaver was an American writer and artist. He achieved notoriety in the years following World War II as the author of controversial stories that were printed in science fiction magazines, in which he claimed that he had had a personal experience of a sinister ancient civilization that harbored fantastic technology in the caverns of the earth. The controversy stemmed from the claim by Shaver and his editor and publisher Ray Palmer that Shaver's writings, while presented in the guise of fiction, were fundamentally true. Rosicrucianism. Rosicrucianism is a spiritual and cultural movement which arose in Europe in the early 17th century after the publication of several texts which announced the existence of a hitherto unknown esoteric order to the world and made seeking its knowledge attractive to many. The mysterious doctrine of the order is, quote, built on esoteric truths of the ancient past, which, concealed from the average man, provide insight into nature, the physical universe, and the spiritual realm. The Rosicrucian manifestos heralded a universal reformation of mankind through a science allegedly kept secret for decades until the intellectual climate might receive it. Controversies arose on whether there were a hoax, whether the Order of the Rosy Cross existed as described in the manifestos, or whether the whole thing was a metaphor disguising a movement that really existed but in a different form. DMT Beings. Now, I've never tried DMT before, so I don't really know much about this topic or what they actually looked like, but many people have had experiences with otherworldly beings which they believe can communicate with them or see them while they're tripping. And they theorize that DMT is a technology designed to show us things and doesn't actually manipulate anything inside of us. It seems that these so-called entities or aliens have found a tool to bring us back to their world briefly, teach us lessons, and send us back. And some people theorize that DMT entities are beings who have mastered the art of time travel and can communicate with humans without physically materializing. Porn control. Basically, this is a concept that porn is used to control your attitude, ideas, and thoughts and keep you at a low state of vibration. The UK National Health Service likens sex addiction to drug addiction and states the disorder can include having a porn habit that feels out of control. But although porn can be a component in sex addiction, whether porn itself can cause an addiction is yet to be proven. However, studies have shown that watching porn could shrink a part of the brain linked to pleasure. Sinkholes. A sinkhole, also known as a C-note, sinkhole, swallowed, swallow hole, or dough line, is a depression or hole in the ground caused by some form of collapse of the surface layer. Most are caused by the chemical dissolution of carbonate rocks or suffosion processes. However, other people believe that there are man-made sinkholes that occur all around the world that are due to drilling and other human interactions on the environment. Missing children forest. There are places in the world which seem to harbor dark, ominous secrets with the echoes of unknown history. Here, unsolved mysteries, vanishings, and deaths haunt the landscape and hold evasive clues that continue to perplex and baffle experts. This location is a stretch of rough wilderness and rugged mountains just outside the city of Los Angeles, California, in the United States, which was ground zero for a series of bizarre, chilling vanishings of young children that have remained unsolved to this day and continue to stir discussion and debate. At a total of 700,000 acres, the forest encompasses large portions of protected land that remain in remarkably pristine condition, considering its proximity to such a densely populated city as Los Angeles. Temporary autonomous zones. Temporary autonomous zones are described as the best way to create a non-hierarchical system of social relationships in order to concentrate on the present and on releasing one's own mind from the controlling mechanisms that have been imposed on it. Temporary autonomous zones are the primary method of resisting social norms and living out alternative social values. There are a number of types of temporary autonomous zones described as pirate utopias, insurrections, failed revolutions, and dinner parties. Pleroma. Pleroma generally refers to the totality of divine powers. It is used in Christian theological contexts, especially in Gnosticism. The term also appears in the Epistle to the Colossians, which is traditionally attributed to Paul the Apostle, although its authenticity is widely doubted by modern scholars. The word is also used 17 times in the New Testament. In Gnosticism, the pleroma is a spiritual fullness or perfection that descended upon Christ temporarily and can descend upon other human beings as well. The pleroma will never be permanently attached to a physical body because matter is considered evil, and only the spiritual is good. Solipsism. Solipsism is the idea that you can only be sure that you have an actual mind. It's the idea that your experiences are the only things known to exist, such as the external world, and everything else only exists as you perceive it. To put solipsism in perspective, many people who believe it go by the fact that you can't prove that I'm real, just as I can't prove that you're real. But I feel real because I have my own conscience and I perceive the universe as it is. However, I cannot prove that to anybody, just as nobody can prove it to me. That's really how the whole idea stems off. Henotheism. Henotheism is the worship of a single overarching God while not denying the existence or possible existence of any other lower deities. For example, this would be like believing that the Christian God is the one real, true God, while the other gods from any other religion are still in existence, but they're just lower forms of deities, if that makes sense. Publius Enigma. The Publius Enigma is an internet phenomenon and an unsolved problem that began with cryptic messages posted by a user identifying only as Publius to an unmoderated forum. The messenger proposed a riddle in connection with the 1994 Pink Floyd album, The Division Bell, promising that the answer would lead to a reward. Guitarist David Gilmour denied any involvement, while album artist Storm Thorgerson was bemused. According to the drummer Nick Mason, he states that EMI Records was responsible. It remains unclear if the enigma involves a genuinely solvable puzzle as part of an early internet-based contest or was a convoluted hoax. Thule. The Thule Society, originally a study group for German antiquity, was a German occultist group founded in Munich shortly after World War I, named after a mythical northern country in Greek legend. The society is notable chiefly as the organization that sponsored the German Workers' Party, which is the party that ended up being recognized as the Nazi Party. According to Hitler biographer Ian Kershaw, the organization's membership lists include early Nazi sympathizers and leading figures in Munich. Some of these members were Rudolf Hess, Alfred Rosenberg, Hans Frank, Gottfried Feder, Dietrich Eckart, and Karl Harrer. The primary focus of the Thule Society was a claim concerning the origins of the Aryan race. In 1917, people who wanted to join the Germanic order, out of which the Thule Society developed in 1918, had to sign a special blood declaration of faith concerning their lineage. Quantum jumping. The quantum jump method, also known as the Monte Carlo wave function, is a technique in computational physics used for simulating open quantum systems and quantum dissipation. To scientists, quantum jumps are tiny, discrete, and abrupt. The idea of quantum particles is that they can exist in material form at one energy level or another, but not in between. This can also be seen as like a form of teleportation between two specific locations or even between dimensions. Russian sleep experiments. The Russian sleep experiment is a creepypasta which tells the tale of 5 test subjects being exposed to an experimental sleep-inhibiting stimulant in a Soviet-era scientific experiment, which has become the basis of an urban legend. In a military-sanctioned scientific experiment, 5 political prisoners were kept in a sealed gas chamber, with an airborne stimulant continually administered in order to keep the subjects awake for 30 consecutive days. The prisoners were falsely promised that they would be set free from prison if they completed the experiment. However, if you've already heard about it, or if you can already guess, the experiment did not go as planned. It only lasted about 15 days, I think. In the experiment, they tried to end it on the 15th day, but the subjects didn't want to turn the gas off, and they discovered severe mutilation, disembowelment. They tore off flesh and muscles off of each other. They even saw that they had killed one of the other subjects and began to eat their bodies, and yeah. Some people speculate that this might be real, but you could take a look into it for yourself and make your own decision about it. It's a good story. Die Glocke. I hope I'm saying that right. The Glocke was apparently a top secret Nazi scientific technological device, secret weapon, or Wunderwaffe. First described by Polish journalist and author Igor Witowski, it was later popularized by military journalist and author Nick Cook, who associated it with Nazi occultism, anti-gravity, and free energy research. Mainstream reviewers have criticized claims about Die Glocke as being pseudo-scientific, recycled rumors and a hoax. Die Glocke and other alleged Nazi miracle weapons have been dramatized in video games, television shows, and novels. Some people believe that Die Glocke was an actual time machine, and according to theories of some physicists, a torsion field of sufficient intensity can bend space around a generator. The more torsion you create, the more space you alter, and when you bend space, you can also bend time. Fulcanelli. Fulcanelli was the name used by a French alchemist and esoteric author whose identity is still debated. The name Fulcanelli seems to be a play on words Vulcan, the ancient Roman god of fire, plus El, a Khanite name for a god, and so the sacred fire. The appeal of Fulcanelli as a cultural phenomenon is due partly to the mystery of most aspects of his life and works. One of the anecdotes pertaining to his life retells, in particular, how his most devoted pupil, Eugene Cancelit, performed a successful transmutation of 100 grams of lead into gold with the use of a small quantity of projection powder given to him by his teacher, in the presence of Julien Champagne and Gaston Sauvage. Esoteric Knowledge. Western esotericism, also known as esotericism, is a term under which scholars have categorized a wide range of loosely related ideas and movements which have developed within the Western society. These ideas and currents are united by the fact that they are largely distinct both from Orthodox Judeo-Christian religion and from Enlightenment rationalism. Esotericism has pervaded various forms of Western philosophy, religion, pseudoscience, art, literature, and music, continuing to affect intellectual ideas and popular culture. A second perspective sees esotericism as a category that encompasses movements which embrace an enchanted worldview in the face of increasing disenchantment. Arnold's real height. For years, Arnold Schwarzenegger's official height has been listed at 6'1.5", but the number has failed to satisfy reporter after reporter, who accuse him of stretching the truth, wearing lifts, or both. One journalist, for example, consulted several sources for inside info and came up with a range of results. The writer's own wife, who had previously met Arnold, estimated that he was about 5'6", while renowned critic Roger Ebert, when contacted for the sake of the same Chicago Reader article, also dismissed the official number of 6'1". He wrote, "No way, I'd guess 5'10 or 5'11". However, what we all don't know for sure is Arnold's actual height. French Viper releases. French Viper releases is a theory that hundreds, if not thousands, of snakes were released into the French countryside by shadowy organizations. You can find some articles about this, but most of the actual stories are in French, so. Denver Airport. Conspiracy theorists have linked the Denver International Airport to the Illuminati, Freemasons, and shadowy government operations for decades. Its bizarre murals, gargoyles, and ominous horse statue, which accidentally killed its creator, have certainly given them plenty of reasons. The unusual artistic choices in a series of tunnels beneath the airport added fuel to the conspiracy theorists' fire, from a stone slab bearing the Freemason symbol to runways that look like a swastika. The Denver airport has no shortage of conspiracy theory fodder. Natural park closures. One of the greatest mysteries that has come to light in recent times is the disappearance of people from natural parks. A lot of parks end up closing for the searching of missing people, and these people who go missing do not appear to have been killed by animals or abducted by humans. Now, there's a lot of theories around what actually happens to people when they go missing in large natural parks. Some people even believe that they accidentally wander into a different dimension. Here are some of the reasons why. 99% of the time, canines can't find the scent or often aren't interested in finding the scent of the person. Weather is usually really bad and tends to impact search and rescue efforts. Victims are found in an area previously searched because a fog or blizzard just seemed to appear from the first time it was searched. Oftentimes, the victims are found without shoes or pieces of clothing, and missing bodies are often found near creeks, rivers, ponds, lakes, and streams. Spots that where if you were lost, you would be able to survive for a little while due to there being a water source. Gray goo. Gray goo is a hypothetical global catastrophic scenario involving molecular nanotechnology in which out-of-control, self-replicating machines consume all biomass on Earth while building more of themselves. This theory goes as far to say that these machines would never stop replicating and never stop consuming mass until the Earth was just replaced by the machines. The original idea assumed the machines were designed to have this capability, while popularizations have assumed that machines might somehow gain this capability by accident. Archons. Archons are, in Gnosticism and religions closely related to it, the builders of the physical universe. The Archons are rulers, each related to one of the 7 planets. They prevent souls from leaving the material realm. The political connotation of their name reflects rejection of the governmental system as flawed without chance of true salvation. The Archons are the rulers of a realm within the kingdom of darkness, who together make up the Prince of Darkness. Some people speculate that the Archons are non-physical alien species whom we know as biblical demons that have enslaved us and are absorbing our energy. Lake Baikal. Since ancient times, Lake Baikal has been known as a deeply mysterious place, but in the final years of the Soviet era and ever since the lake and its surrounding region have been the source of a number of alleged UFO and alien sightings, the lake has become a UFO hunting hotspot. In fact, it is reported that in 1982, 7 military divers went to investigate the lake and discovered strange activity only a few dozen meters beneath the surface. At a depth of around 50 meters, they met swimmers around 3 meters tall, dressed in strange suits. They did not seem to wear diving gear, just helmets on their heads. The military divers allegedly pursued the creatures but eventually gave up, and the government has denied that this ever happened. It's also reported that astronauts and cosmonauts on board the International Space Station have seen gigantic circles on the lake's surface, clearly visible from space. Mach's principle. In theoretical physics, particularly in discussions of gravitation theories, Mach's principle is a name given by Einstein to an imprecise hypothesis often credited to the physicist and philosopher Ernst Mach. The purpose of the hypothesis was to attempt to explain how rotating objects maintain a frame of reference, such as gyroscopes spinning and spinning celestial bodies. The idea is that the existence of absolute rotation is determined by the large-scale distribution of matter. Here's an example that was given of this. You're standing in a field looking at the stars. Your arms are resting freely at your side, and you see that the distant stars are not moving. Now if you start spinning, the stars are whirling around you and your arms are being pulled away from your body. The question is, why should your arms be pulled away when the stars are whirling? And why should they be dangling freely when the stars aren't moving? Mach's principle says that this is not a coincidence, that there is a physical law that relates to the motion of the distant stars to the local inertial frame. Mach suggests that there is some physical law which would make it so that you would feel a centrifugal force. There are a number of rival formulations of the principle. It is often stated in vague ways like mass out there in the universe influences inertia here. A very general statement of Mach's principle is local physical laws are determined by the large-scale structure of the universe. Spirit Science. The Spirit Science is a website created by Jordan David Pierce, a native of Winnipeg, Canada. The Spirit Science is also a YouTube channel which promotes a wide range of New Age intellect, including, but not limited to, astral projection, chakras, crystal woo, orgone energy, and sacred geometry, generally bearing a lot of resemblance to theosophy. Dancing Plague. The Dancing Plague of 1518 was a case of dancing mania that occurred in Strasbourg, Alsace, now modern-day France. Somewhere between 50 and 400 people took to dancing for days. Historical documents, including physician notes, cathedral sermons, local and regional chronicles, and even notes issued by the Strasbourg City Council, are clear that the victims danced. Historical sources agree that there was an outbreak of dancing after a single woman started dancing and a group of mostly young women joined in, and the dancing did not seem to die down. It lasted for such a long time that it attracted the attention of the Strasbourg magistrate and bishop, and some number of doctors ultimately intervened, putting the afflicted in a hospital. Pokani. Pokani Forest is a forest located in Latvia near a small town named Dobele. This forest has been shrouded in mystery for many years and is a place that many consider to be a strong anomalous zone due to things such as strange temperatures and unknown rocks. The forest was allegedly first studied in 1996 by Ivar Vix, who was a researcher from Riga. He was supposedly intrigued by the forest and the various stories of bizarre and unexplainable occurrences taking place there. He witnessed many strange things in the forest, such as rocks emitting electromagnetic energy. Strangely, soon after Ivar began his research into the forest, he fell ill with an unknown disease that took his life, leading many people to believe this was linked to him investigating the forest. Plain of Jars. The Plain of Jars is a megalithic archaeological landscape in Laos. It consists of thousands of stone jars scattered around the upland valleys and the lower foothills of the central plain of the Zhangqiaoang Plateau. The jars are arranged in clusters ranging in a number from 1 to several hundred. It was concluded in 1930 that the jars were apparently associated with prehistoric burial practices. Excavation by Lao and Japanese archaeologists in the intervening years have supported this interpretation with the discovery of human remains, burial goods, and ceramics around the jars. Lao legends tell of a race of giants who inhabited the area and who were ruled by a king named Kung Chuing, who fought a long and ultimately victorious battle against an enemy. He supposedly created the jars to brew and store huge amounts of alcohol to celebrate his victory. Between May 1964 and the summer of 1969, the Plain of Jars was heavily bombed by the U.S. Air Force, operating against North Vietnamese and Pathet Lao communist forces. The bombing included 262 million anti-personnel cluster bombs, and an estimated 80 million of these did not explode and remain a deadly threat to the population. Panspermia. Panspermia is a hypothesis that life exists throughout the universe, distributed by space dust, meteoroids, asteroids, comets, planetoids, and also by spacecraft carrying unintended contamination by microorganisms. Distribution may have occurred spanning galaxies, and so may not be restricted to the limited scale of solar systems. Panspermia hypotheses propose that microscopic life forms that can survive the effects of space, such as extremophiles, can be trapped in debris ejected into space after collisions between planets and small solar system bodies that harbor life. Some organisms may travel dormant for an extended amount of time before colliding randomly with other planets or intermingling with protoplanetary disks. Under a certain level of ideal impact circumstances into a body of water, for example, and ideal conditions on the planet's surfaces, it is possible that the surviving organisms could become active and begin to colonize their new environment. Panspermia studies concentrate not on how life began, but on methods that may distribute it in the universe. Deep ecology fascism. Ecofascism is a theoretical political model in which an authoritarian government would require individuals to sacrifice their own interests to the organic whole of nature. Some writers have used it to refer to the hypothetical danger of future dystopian governments, which might resort to fascist policies in order to deal with environmental issues. Other writers have used it to refer to segments of historical and modern fascist movements that focused on environmental issues. Environmental historian Michael E. Zimmerman defines ecofascism as a totalitarian government that requires individuals to sacrifice their own interests to the well-being of the land, understood as a splendid web of life, or the organic whole of nature, including peoples and their states. The Beacon of Hate. This shortwave radio signal was detected back in 2000 by a man who later went on to start a website covering it. The writer states that they began detecting it and that it was using Morse code to send out its messages, and they were as follows. The US government ripped off the camels. They can't put in God we trust, and the money. As it becomes apparent, these messages have an extremely large amount of typos. You can't say if they're intentional or not, but some require a professional translator of poor English to understand. One states that camels don't pay taxes and that the government has the mark of the beast, which is given to those who follow the Antichrist and are branded as told in the book of Revelation. Yeah, but these messages, they're interesting. WebDriver Torso. WebDriver Torso is a YouTube account that became famous in 2014 for speculations about its nature and jokes featured in some of its videos. Created on March 7, 2013, the channel began uploading videos on September 23rd of the same year, consisting of simple slides accompanied by beeps. From September 30th, 2016 to October 31st, 2019, the channel uploaded a total of 624,774 videos. The interval between one upload and another usually lasted between 1 and 15 minutes, but sometimes up to 1 hour. With the exception of 3, all the videos follow the same set of standards described. Most of the videos are usually 11 seconds long, although some are around 1 minute, 5 minutes, or 25 minutes. There are slideshows showing slides about 1 second long each. Each slide consists of a solid white background overlapped by 2 solid color opaque rectangles, one red and the other blue. Both rectangles have a random size, shape, and position on the slide. When the two overlap, the red rectangle always appears over the blue one, and on rare occasions, the red rectangle completely covers up the blue one. Each slide has a random computer-generated wavetone. Prior to YouTube's confirmation of the channel as a test channel, there was some speculation about the identity and the content of the videos. Hypotheses about the channel's purposes included spy messages, contact by extraterrestrial life forms, construction plans, and a Cicada 3301 recruitment program. Death Worm. The Mongolian death worm is a creature alleged to exist in the Gobi Desert. The creature first came to Western attention as a result of Roy Chapman Andrews' 1926 book called On the Trail of Ancient Man. The American paleontologist described second-hand tales of the monster that he heard at a gathering of Mongolian officials. None of those present ever had seen the creature, but they all firmly believed in its existence and described it minutely. It was described as traveling underground, creating waves of sand on the surface which allow it to be detected. It is said it can kill at a distance, either by spraying venom at its prey or by means of electric discharge. It primarily lives and burrows underground, only rarely coming up to the surface. Feral children. A feral child is a human child who has lived isolated from human contact at a very young age, and so has had little or no experience of human care, behavior, or human language. There are several confirmed cases and other speculative ones. Feral children may have experienced severe abuse or trauma before being abandoned or running away. They are sometimes the subjects of folklore or legends, typically portrayed as having been raised by animals. Feral children lack the basic social skills that are normally learned in the process of enculturation. For example, they may be unable to learn to use a toilet, have trouble learning to walk upright after walking on all fours all their lives, or display a complete lack of interest in the human activity around them. Toxoplasmosis. Toxoplasmosis is a disease that results from infection with the Toxoplasma gondii parasite, one of the world's most common parasites. Infection usually occurs by eating uncooked, contaminated meat, exposure from infected cat feces, or mother-to-child transmission during pregnancy. Toxoplasmosis may cause flu-like symptoms in some people, but most people affected never develop signs or symptoms. It has also been associated with mental disorders, including schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Gaydar. Gaydar refers to the intuitive ability of a person to assess others' sexual orientations as homosexual, bisexual, or heterosexual. Gaydar relies on verbal and nonverbal clues of LGBT stereotypes. These include the sensitivity to social behaviors and mannerisms, for instance, acknowledging flamboyant body language, the tone of voice used by a person when speaking, overtly rejecting traditional gender roles, a person's occupation, and grooming habits. Antinatalism. Antinatalism is a philosophical position and social movement that assigns a negative value to birth. Antinatalists argue that humans should abstain from procreation because it is morally wrong, and in scholarly and literary writings, various ethical foundations have been presented for antinatalism. Peter Wiesel Zapp viewed humans as a biological paradox. According to him, consciousness has become over-evolved in humans, thereby making us incapable of functioning normally like other animals. Cognition gives us more than we can carry. Our frailness and insignificance in the cosmos is visible to us. We want to live, and yet because of how we have evolved, we are the only species whose members are conscious that they are destined to die. We are able to analyze the past and the future, both our situation and that of others, as well as to imagine the suffering of billions of other people and feel compassion for their suffering. We yearn for justice and meaning in a world that lacks both. This ensures that the lives of conscious individuals are tragic. We have desires, spiritual needs that reality is unable to satisfy, and our species still exists only because we limit our awareness of what that reality actually entails. Procreation is described as manipulation and harm, a unilateral and non-consensual sending of a human being into a painful, dangerous, and morally impending situation. Introspection Rundown. The Introspection Rundown is a controversial Church of Scientology auditing process that is intended to handle a psychotic episode or complete mental breakdown. Introspection is defined for the purpose of this rundown as a condition where the person is looking into one's mind, feelings, reactions, etc. The result is the person is extroverted and no longer looking inward worriedly continuously without end. The first step of the rundown is to isolate the person wholly with all attendants completely muzzled, which means no talking. Auditing sessions are given frequently, otherwise the person is not spoken to. The Introspection Rundown came under public scrutiny after the death of Lisa McPherson in 1995. Lisa McPherson had a car accident in Clearwater, Florida on the 18th of November 1995 while studying at Scientology headquarters. She was taken to a hospital for psychiatric evaluation, but some Scientologists arrived and stated that McPherson did not believe in psychiatry, and she checked out after a short evaluation and left with the Scientologists. McPherson was put on the Introspection Rundown after her accident, and it was her second time on the rundown, her first time having been in June. Her appearance after death was that of someone who had been denied water and food for quite some time, being both underweight and severely dehydrated. Her skin was covered with over 100 insect bites, presumably from cockroaches. She was locked in a room for 17 days. The church has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing and now makes members sign a waiver before Introspection Rundown, specifically stating that they, or anyone on their behalf, will not bring any legal action against the organization over injury or death. KKK funded by governments. This is a short one. It's really just the theory that the government funds an ultra-racist organization which campaigns against assimilation and supports racial supremacy. Charles Fort. Charles Hoy Fort was an American writer and researcher who specialized in anomalous phenomena. Fort's books sold well and are still in print today. His work continues to inspire admirers who refer to themselves as Fortians and has influenced some aspects of science fiction. During 1915, Fort began to write two books, titled X and Y, the first dealing with the idea that beings on Mars were controlling events on Earth, and the second with the postulation of a sinister civilization extant at the South Pole. He was also perhaps the first person to explain strange human appearances and disappearances by the hypothesis of alien abduction, and was an early proponent of the extraterrestrial hypothesis, specifically suggesting that strange lights or objects sighted in the skies might be alien spacecraft. USA is an experiment. The United States is considered, quote-unquote, the great experiment because it is conceptually based on the individual being born with unalienable rights that are not granted by the government but inherently endowed within each being. It was the first time in history in which the government would be subservient to the individual. Technically, by these terms, the concept of the United States of America was an experiment. Titanic didn't sink. Titanic was one of 3 Olympic-class ocean liners built at the Harland and Wolff shipyards in Belfast, the 2 other being the RMS Britannic and the RMS Olympic. The Olympic was launched a year before the Titanic, but seemed to share in the Titanic's poor luck. Within months of its launch in 1911, it had 2 serious collisions, the second with Royal Navy cruiser HMS Hawke off of the coast of Isle of Wight, causing serious structural damage to the Olympic's keel and steel beams. The already troubled White Star Line was facing potential financial disaster. So the Olympic theory goes that the Olympic would be swapped with the Titanic and sunk in a staged accident. The Titanic, now disguised as the Olympic, would then carry on in its service. Proponents of the swap theory have pointed out the disparities in the number of portholes on the ships. The Olympic had 16 and the Titanic had 14. Photographs taken of the Titanic in a dock show it with 14 portholes, but by the time of its doomed mated voyage, it now had 16, just like the Olympic. The Road to Ruta. The Federal Reserve Bank of Boston originally released this Fed comic back in 1981. As of today, there have been many comics released, but Wishes and Rainbows is the only one that was updated, re-released, and is the one with the teacher's guide, The Road to Ruta. Some people believe that this comic is more than just a children's learning tool designed to teach kids about scarcity, but a window into the secretive world of the Federal Reserve Bank and monetary policy. Bielefeld Psyops. Bielefeld's conspiracy is a satirical conspiracy theory that claims that the city of Bielefeld, Germany, does not exist, but an illusion propagated by various forces. The story goes that the city of Bielefeld does not actually exist. Rather, its existence is merely propagated by an entity known only as SIE, which has conspired with the authorities to create the illusion of the city's existence. The theory poses 3 questions. Do you know anybody from Bielefeld? Have you ever been to Bielefeld? And do you know anybody who has ever been to Bielefeld? A majority are expected to answer no to all 3 questions. Anybody claiming knowledge about Bielefeld is promptly disregarded as being in on the conspiracy, or having been themselves deceived. Speculations about this theory include the CIA, Mossad, or aliens who use Bielefeld University as a disguise for their spaceship. Smithsonian suppression. Some believe the Smithsonian has a huge underground warehouse in New York City filled with thousands of skeletons, objects, and information that might prove embarrassing to conventional history. A late naturalist and author, Ivan T. Sanderson, told of an incident during World War II on the Aleutian island of Shema, in which engineers building an airstrip uncovered the remains of gigantic humans. One cranium measured almost 24 inches from the base to the crown, compared to the normal 8 inches. Oddly, all the skulls showed evidence of trepanning, which meant poking holes into the skull with crude tools to release evil spirits. The remains were reportedly sent to the Smithsonian, which, despite the seeming importance of such a find, never released any further information, and is speculated to have destroyed the archaeological finds. Many people speculate that the Smithsonian has much to hide, and would rather not deny our already set archaeological history. Alright, so that's it. That's tier 3. Plenty of good stuff in that one. We're gonna move on to tier 4. I'm sorry it took me so long to do this video. I got caught up in the Dogecoin, GameStop stock market exchanges, all that type of stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna start working on tier 4 for y'all. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.